Hey guys, welcome back to Bowls with the Bard. My name is Cakes, I am your host. This week we are chatting with Brad Norris. Brad is a theatrical renaissance man of sorts. He is the co-founding artistic producer at Cohesion Theater Company. He has acted and directed all across the Baltimore theater scene. He's a teaching artist at the Baltimore Shakespeare Factory, and he has also fight choreographed for various theaters in Baltimore. Brad and I actually met because he was fight choreographing Cohesion Theater Company's Hatsfield versus McCoy's production of Henry V. So, without further ado, here is Brad. We are back with Brad's pitch.
Here's Brad's pitch. Brad's pitch. Here's Brad Pitt. Here's Brad Pitt.
Here's Brad Pitt. Where?
Oh, he must have left already. So this is a thing that I've talked about with a couple of people on random Shakespearean shows that I've worked on. I started formulating this back when zombies were cool. I don't think zombies are cool anymore. I don't know. Walking Dead's been going for like 15 seasons or something. But I had this idea about the idea starts with this concept that like all Shakespearean plays happen in the same world, right? Like sort of like Disney princesses. Let's assume Disney princesses all have the same world. In the same way that like Frozen, like their parents like get drowned, and that's the ship you see in The Little Mermaid, right? Or whatever, right? Like, let's assume that all of Shakespeare's plays happen in the same world. So like Hamlet and Macbeth, same time, just different places, right? Yeah. Romeo and Juliet, like down here, you know, in Italy, you know, same time, different places, kind of thing. I don't know how the histories work in this because obviously they've many years and maybe the histories aren't a part of this. Who knows? Histories are their own universe. But let's assume that all of Shakespeare's characters and then all of Shakespeare's stories happen within the same universe. This is the Marvel, it's the MCU of Shakespeare.
Of Shakespeare.
Right. That's the best way I've ever been to describe that.
That's great.
Thank you, MCU, for existing and giving me that nugget. So the idea is, and this is obviously like a semi-original work that like Conan kind of bastardizes a lot of Shakespeare in the process, but it's that there's a zombie outbreak, probably in the middle of Macbeth. Okay. Probably right around the time, like I think it's the fault of the witches. Let's go with that. Like or the fault of Macbeth for like letting the witches in, kind of thing, like whatever it is. But like Banquo potentially is like patient zero, right? Like dies, becomes back to life in the banquet scene, right? So like the whole idea that like other people can't see him is maybe out the window, or potentially nobody's paying attention and looking the other direction at like Macbeth, and Banquo enters the room and he's like, what the fuck? And like everybody's like, what are you talking about, sire? And then like somebody gets bitten or like ripped to shreds or whatever, and then it's like, fuck, it is on, right? And then at that point, like it just devolves into like, we have to like knuckle up and like deal with zombies everywhere. But then in the process of this, we get to go to other storylines, right? So like we get to go see like Hamlet in Denmark, like and potentially like I think Hamlet is probably actually the last one we go and see. But we get to go to like Florence and we get to watch like Romeo and Juliet happen and things like that, and like certain members of the family or other people like Tybalt comes back as a zombie and stuff like that. Like there's just armies of zombies, and like as we go from story to story to story, we carry certain characters with us, right? So like let's assume that Macbeth and maybe Lady Macbeth and maybe like Old Seward, I don't know, or like Ross or whatever, like make it out of Macbeth in Scotland alive.
Okay.
and then they head down to like England and gather up a couple of other characters, and then they head down like to mainland Europe, like because the island is lost, whatever, and like they get to Europe and like we're gathering characters as we go. And some characters are like lost and they're zombies, and others are not, and there's just like waves of zombies and things like that. I think we end up in Denmark. Because if you're making smart choices in a zombie apocalypse, you head north, right? Because if history and the book World War Z, not the movie's terrible, the book World War Z have taught us anything, it's that zombies and cold don't mix, right? So you need to head north in a zombie apocalypse. So we finally, after we've done all the things that we've done in Spain with Moors, and like we've gotten like, you know, people on our side, then we head up to Denmark where we meet Hamlet in his castle, you know, and like his father as a ghost has been like warning him against like the impending doom and things like that. And essentially like we replace Fortinbras' army that's approaching the whole play with an army of zombies. The army of the undead is coming, and like the final showdown happens at like Hamlet's castle in Denmark with like Macbeth and maybe like Juliet, because Romeo didn't make it because he's a pussy, and then like tons of others, a cast of others.
Just like picturing Shakespeare characters in Marvel costumes at this point.
Totally, right? Right. Like I'd like to imagine there's a really dramatic and tearful scene somewhere on the way out of England, or maybe you know when we're in Europe or something like that, where you get like a young Hal, right? But like an old who's the guy?
Falstaff?
There we go, Falstaff. Oh man.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be Henry IV or Falstaff.
No, you got Falstaff, right? Like you get a young Hal and Falstaff, right? And like Falstaff is like this really like big fat drunkard, right? But he's made it this far, right? Like, but like in the same way that like in every other like zombie movie, like there's some point where like you're just not gonna make it, right? Like he's been like injured or something like that. He's not gonna make it, and so like you hand Falstaff like the crossbow or whatever, and he like holds the door. He Hodors it. He fucking Hodors it. As like everybody else gets out, and like Falstaff is done, but in like a really fantastic way. Because that's one of the things I always.
No, it's gonna be like like he's gonna save the day, and then the way he turns into a zombie's gotta be like comical.
I don't think that. I was gonna say.
Oh, you
like,
think it's gonna be the opposite?
Oh, I don't think that Falstaff gets turned into a zombie. I think he gets devoured by zombies, right? Like it's one of those like horrific like zombies ate Falstaff kind of a thing. Like there was just a swarm of zombies, and like there's no retribution there. There's no like Falstaff comes back later. Like Falstaff is just like guts and gore. Like he's done, right? Game over, man. Game over.
It's just kind of comical in and of itself.
Right, but like it's one of those things where like the fool, essentially, like the comic character who's been with him, like eventually he's like, look, I'm not making it all the way, but like, and then it's like Hal, you are king now, like you have to carry on, kind of a shit like that, you know, and it's like, oh, and then he just like plants his fat ass right in front of the doors, you know, as like this wave of zombies comes, and then they just like take him out, but it buys everybody else the time they need to like get on the boat or get on the train or get on the carriage of horses or whatever the fuck they get on and get out of there, you know.
Just picture Mufasa, the Lion King.
It's very Mufasa. It's very like I see like there's a lot of like aliens in this for me, you know, and that like you know every other Marine in Aliens is like sacrificing themselves to save like everybody else, and it's like you realize Ripley's the only one getting out of this, right? Like nobody else is making it to the next movie. Like let's not be deluded here. Like she's clearly not a Marine, so she's clearly the only one making it. And like a little girl, we don't have time for that shit. She's gonna be like 15, 16 before we make this next movie, so she's not in it. Done. And that's where you get Aliens 3, which is set in a penal colony, and everybody's dead. Anyway, that's my pitch. I imagine that this is, at the very least, like a 3-parter theatrical spectacle, you know?
Yes.
Because there's no way that, like, we've got to include enough Shakespeare in it, like not just Shakespeare characters, but like we've got to have like some monologues, and we've got to tie storylines in together and stuff like that. Like, but I think we can do it in a way that makes sense, going from geographic location to geographic location.
Yes.
And so maybe like the Exodus from England is like part 1. And then when they get on the European continent and start collecting like Othello and like other people, and then like down into Italy, like that's part 2. And then like the final stand in Denmark is part 3, kind of a thing. And then who knows? Who knows who lives or who dies?
Like,
who tells your story?
It like actually is the MCU.
Yeah, it's totally the MCU.
I'm quite literally catching up on the MCU right now, and as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, you gotta get to know everybody.
Right.
You gotta get emotionally invested.
Right.
And then it's Infinity Wars. Like,
Right.
There you go.
And a 3-part, that's the thing. That's the one thing I think Shakespeare was wrong about, is the 5-act structure is too much. You need 3 acts, and that's all you need. Alan Arkin, in his book about theater, which I don't know why I'm referencing this, it just shows you what a nerd I am. But like, Alan Arkin, who is a phenomenal actor, in his book about theater, references the 3-act structure and says that he says like the way the 3-act structure works, and this is all you need for storytelling of any kind, is like Act 1, you get your hero up a tree. Act 2, you throw rocks at him. And Act 3, you get him back down again.
Okay.
Right? And that's the 3-act structure, right? And I feel like Shakespeare complicates things with the 5-act structure. It gives you a lot more time to go different places and get into subplots and things like that. And that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, what's the first thing that anybody cuts in a Shakespeare play? It's all the fucking subplots.
Yep.
You know? Like, you're like, great, like these 3 characters,
Cool.
done. Like, they were fun, but done with them, right? And then like, what's the first thing that Tom Stoppard does? He writes a whole play about those characters that get cut. I've directed Rosencrantz and Guildenstern twice now.
I love that.
It's a phenomenal piece of theater. I think I'm done with it. I think I'm done. Which is to say that it could never be topped, because the last people that I had involved in it were the best ever possible people that could be involved in it, and they're not going to watch this video, so that doesn't even matter. Ta-da. But yeah, no. So that's my pitch. It's a zombie apocalypse Shakespeare canon of some kind,
I love it.
and I have to find a way to tie it all together. But I think we can do it. I think it's exactly what Shakespeare needs. You know, more exposure.
Yes. Definitely.
There's just not enough.
Definitely.
We need to.
Cannot beat that dead horse enough.
Right. We need to find a way to introduce Shakespeare to a new generation of zombie lovers.
Hey, that's what this is all about.
That's what every good playwright needs. It's more zombies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I was very excited you reached out.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to see more content like it, please like us on Facebook at Bulls with the Bard, subscribe to us on YouTube at Bulls with the Bard, and follow us on Instagram at Stoned Shakespeare. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.
1,000 sighs to save. Oh, lay me where sad true lover never find my grave to weep there.